My in-laws tried to gift my $1.2 million house to their favorite son. I walked in with the deed and watched them panic. I, 26 male, have been married to my wife for 3 years, and from the start, we agreed that we would be building our own life together, completely independent of our families. My parents-in-law, however, never quite accepted that. They have always been obsessed with their legacy, which usually just meant finding ways to favor their golden child, my brother-in-law, Dave. Dave is 32, lives off their support, and thinks the world owes him a throne. He has never worked a steady job, yet they treat him like a CEO who just happens to be between ventures. For the past year, my wife and I have been living in a beautiful custom-built house that I purchased before we were even engaged. It's a gorgeous place, valued at $1.2 million, and it's entirely in my name. I worked 6 years of 80-hour weeks in the tech industry to afford the down payment and the mortgage. It is my sanctuary, and it is my hard work in physical form. Every corner of that place represents a sacrifice I made in my early 20s. About 6 months ago, my wife's parents started joking about how the house would be a perfect starter home for Dave. I brushed it off as typical weird in-law behavior, assuming they were just trying to get a rise out of me. But then the frequency of these comments increased. Every time they came over for dinner, they would make snide remarks about how spacious the guest bedroom was, or how the office would make a great man cave for Dave's gaming setup. They were testing the waters, and they didn't even care that I was sitting right there. I told my wife to shut it down, and she tried. But she hates conflict, and they know that. They would just steamroll her, laughing off her discomfort as if she were a child who didn't know what was best for the family. They kept pushing the narrative that because Dave was struggling, it was my moral obligation to help him. The situation reached a breaking point last weekend. We had agreed to host a family barbecue, and I specifically told my wife that Dave was not to be given a tour of the house. I had a bad feeling. When I walked outside to check the grill, I saw the father-in-law walking Dave around the property line, pointing at the roof, the landscaping, and the siding. He wasn't just showing him around, he was appraising it. He was looking at it like a piece of meat he was about to butcher. I walked over, my blood boiling. I overheard the father-in-law say, "Don't worry about the current residents, Dave. We've already discussed the transition with your mother. It's time this place served a better purpose for our family." I didn't say a word. I just walked back inside, went to my study, and pulled out the original deed and the legal documents I had kept in the fireproof safe. I wasn't just mad. I was done. I realized they weren't just joking. They had a plan. They had decided in their own delusional minds that my house was just another piece of their family inventory to be moved around at their convenience. They thought I was just a placeholder, someone to pay the taxes until Dave was ready to take over. I came back outside, but I didn't join the party. I walked straight up to them. They were standing on the back deck, drinking beer, looking at my house like it was already theirs. "Enjoying the view?" I asked. My voice was calm, which seemed to catch them off guard. The father-in-law smirked. "It's a fine property. Dave was just saying how much potential it has for his needs." "That's interesting," I said, holding up the thick folder in my hand. "Because you're standing on my property, which is currently valued at $1.2 million, and which will never, under any circumstances, be occupied by Dave." The mother-in-law laughed, a sharp, patronizing sound. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. We've already talked to the realtor. We're working on the paperwork to transfer the title as a family investment." The air in the backyard shifted. The other guests went silent. My wife looked at me, her eyes wide with panic, realizing what was about to happen. I pulled the original deed out and held it up. "There is no transfer. There is no investment. There is only me, the sole owner of this house. And since you seem so confused about who owns what, let me clarify. You are currently trespassing on my $1.2 million investment. If I hear one more word about Dave moving in or any talk of transitioning this property, I will not just call the police. I will make sure the entire extended family sees the legal filings of this little attempted heist." The father-in-law's face went from red to pale in a heartbeat. He looked at the deed, then at me, and his confidence completely evaporated. The reality of the situation finally hit him. He had absolutely zero legal ground to stand on. Dave, who had been grinning a second ago, suddenly looked very interested in his beer and refused to make eye contact. "We were just planning," the mother-in-law stammered, her voice shaking. "It was just a discussion." "No," I said, stepping closer, making sure everyone heard me. "It was a plan to steal my home, and now the plan is over. You have 5 minutes to finish your drinks and get off my property. If you ever mention this house again, or if you try to pull anything like this, the next time you see me, it will be through your lawyer." The panic in their eyes was the most satisfying thing I have ever witnessed. They didn't argue. They didn't try to play the family card. They knew they had been caught red-handed in a fantasy they couldn't possibly defend. They scrambled, rounding up Dave, who looked like he was about to cry, and practically ran to their cars. The rest of the party was tense, but the house remained mine. My wife and I had a long, difficult talk that night. I made it clear that my boundaries are not suggestions, and that if she can't back me up against their delusions, our marriage is in serious trouble. She finally understood. She saw the deed, she saw the reality, and she finally realized that her parents weren't just quirky, they were predatory. She apologized for not standing up for me sooner, and for the first time, she truly seemed to grasp the level of disrespect they had been showing us. They haven't called since. They haven't reached out. The silence is the best thing I could have asked for. I don't know what they tell the rest of the family, and honestly, I don't care. They tried to take my life, my work, and my sanctuary, and they lost. I still own the house, I still own my life, and I have never felt more secure in my decision to draw that line. The panic on their faces told me everything I needed to know. They thought I was weak, and they learned the hard way that they were very, very wrong. Living in that house now feels different. It feels like a fortress that I successfully defended. I've installed extra security cameras and made sure that my legal team has all the documentation regarding this incident on file. I'm not playing games anymore. I've learned that when you deal with people who think the world revolves around them, you don't use words, you use leverage. And having the deed to your own home in your hand is the ultimate leverage. I've had a lot of time to reflect on the last few days. Initially, there was a part of me that felt guilty. Was I too harsh? Did I humiliate them in front of the other guests? But then I remember the look on the father-in-law's face when he was pointing out the roof to Dave, and I lose that guilt instantly. They didn't care about humiliating me. They didn't care about my wife's feelings. They didn't care that they were planning to evict their own daughter and her husband just to make life easier for their son. They were willing to burn our relationship to the ground to keep their little golden child comfortable. When you treat your family like chess pieces, don't be surprised when they stop playing your game. That's the lesson they should have learned a long time ago. My brother-in-law is now 32, and it's about time he learned how the real world works. It's not my responsibility to fund his lifestyle, and it's certainly not my job to provide him with a home that I worked myself to the bone to pay for. I've regained my peace of mind. The house is quiet, the guest room is empty, and I don't have to worry about the next surprise visit. I've set up a system with my wife where we don't host family events for a while. We need the space, and more importantly, we need the distance. It's a time for us to reconnect and build the life we actually want, not the one that her parents envisioned for us. Looking back, the whole thing was a weird wake-up call. I realized my success was something they resented, not something they were actually happy for me about. They wanted to strip away my independence because they couldn't control it. Well, they failed. I am more in control of my future than I have ever been. And if they decide to come back, If they try to transition my property again, they will find that I am not just a homeowner. I am a guardian of my own life. I've learned you have to be ready to defend what's yours, because there will always be someone waiting for you to look away so they can take it. But they won't be taking anything from me. Not today, not ever. The house stands, the locks are changed, and the lesson has been burned into their minds. They will never underestimate me again. For anyone out there struggling with entitled family members, here is my advice. Document everything. Keep your legal papers in a safe place, and never, ever be afraid to make a scene when someone tries to cross a line that shouldn't be crossed. Sometimes a little bit of panic is exactly what they need to realize they aren't the ones in charge. My home is my sanctuary, and it is going to stay that way. It's a $1.2 million reminder that my life is mine, and I'm the only one who gets to decide how it's lived. And honestly, every time I walk through the front door, I feel a sense of relief I can't quite describe. I think about the look on their faces, the way the backyard went dead silent, and the way they scrambled to their cars. It's a memory that stays with me, a constant reminder of the day I stood up for myself. I am not the quiet, conflict-avoidant son-in-law anymore. I am the man who owns his own ground. And that feels good. It feels like a win. In this life, sometimes you have to be the one to claim that victory for yourself, no matter how hard the fight is or who you have to fight against. The stakes might be high, but the reward, the safety and security of your own home, is worth every single penny. I've put my heart and soul into this place, and I am proud to say that it remains exactly where it belongs, with me. Honestly, at this point, I don't really care about keeping up the family act. I've realized that my obligation to my wife and my own peace of mind comes way before their weird, archaic ideas about legacy. If my in-laws want to act like predators, they're going to get treated like intruders. It's not how I wanted things to turn out, but it's the reality they created, not me. I'm just moving forward now. My home is mine, my life is mine, and I'm done apologizing for being successful. It feels pretty damn good to just exist in my own house without having to look over my shoulder for the next family project. They can keep their bitterness, I'll keep my house. And that's a trade I'll make every single time.